Welcome to Mind Trip FM, your nightly historical haven. If our stories help you relax, fall asleep, or simply soothe your curious mind, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment telling us what kind of stories you'd like to hear. Now, let go of the day, close your eyes, and join us as we journey into a forgotten world. You are not going to believe this. In the darkest corners of 17th-century apothecaries, past the shelves of dried leeches and bottled nightmares, there was one substance that terrified even the bravest physician's spider venom. But what if I told you that this venom, harvested drop by drop from the fangs of live spiders, was once used to treat everything from epilepsy to the Black Death? Not just used, worshipped. This is the forgotten story of how doctors, alchemists, and royal physicians believed that a creature so feared, could actually be the cure, and how their obsession with spiders led to one of the most horrifying chapters in medical history. But before you laugh it off as madness, wait, because what they found might not be as crazy as you think. Now, take a deep breath. To a time of wooden operating tables, rusted tools, and the belief that balance in the body could be restored by applying poison, with purpose. This is your day as a venomist in 17th-century Europe. It is 1642. You wake before the sun in a dim, damp room above a plague hospital in Milan. Your fingers are still stained from the ink you used to label yesterday's batch of spider extract. You are a specialist in a field so feared, so misunderstood, that most doctors whisper about you behind closed doors. They call you Venom Doctor, a kind of witch, a kind of genius, depending on who is asking. You descend the spiral stone staircase, your leather satchel clinking with jars. Inside them, a dozen species of spiders, some dead, some not quite. In the main hall, the air stinks of boiled herbs and pus. The patient is Watinga, merchant's wife, her limbs twitching uncontrollably in the throes of what the priests call demonic seizure. But you, of course, know better. To you, this is a classic case of hysteria, of the blood, and there is only one cure. You pull out the jar. Inside, a tarantula the size of your palm slowly stirs, its legs tapping the glass. The woman screams. You reassure her. You are not going to let the spider bite her. Instead, you crush a dried specimen with sulfur, vinegar, and pulverized opium poppy, creating a sticky black bomb. Then you begin the ritual. Not incantation. You wrap her head in hot cloth and begin chanting the timing 15 seconds on, 5 off, repeat. She thrashes, groans, and then, suddenly, stops. She blinks, looks around, and for the first time in days, she speaks. The priest who had been watching silently crosses himself. He may think it was a miracle, but you know it was chemistry. Now, back upstairs, you document every step in your black notebook. Precise measurements, reaction times, color of the venom after 2 days exposed to air. These are your obsessions, because you are chasing something deeper, proof that spiders are not just omens, but instruments. Later that morning, you head into the hills with a burlap sack and a wooden box. You crouch near rocks and undergrowth, coaxing orb weavers into the box with a steady hand. Each spider gets a pinprick to the fangs. It will be dried, weighed, and tested against 14 symptoms tonight. You do this every single day. At the local tavern, you are whispered about. The barkeep refuses to touch your coins. Children throw salt behind you when you pass. Once, someone left a dead chicken nailed to your door. You burned it without flinching, but despite the fear, you get results. You have eased plague sores by applying spider paste and heating the flesh until it sings. You have, more than once, brought the dead-looking back to life, and that makes you dangerous. And so, you get summoned. A letter arrives at dusk, sealed in gold wax. You are to travel to Florence. You pack your tools and leave before dawn. The road to Florence is treacherous, winding through mist-covered hills and silent villages that once thrived before the plague. You carry a wooden crate strapped to your horse containing your most prized sample spider, venom in wax-sealed vials, your dried specimens, and a small bundle of scrolls on venom properties translated from Arabic texts no one else in your town could even read. Florence is different. Florence breathes with gold. You can smell perfume in the air, but beneath the beauty lies something rotten. You see it in the way the guards watch the streets. You feel it in the hush of the courtyards. You are brought through the servants' entrance of a palace older than most cities. Inside, a young boy lies deathly still on a bed draped in silk. His mother clutches a handkerchief stained with blood. The boy has been screaming every night for weeks. Screams of pain, screams of fear. No doctor has been able to find the cause. They say he is possessed, that his soul has been touched by something infernal. You listen, you observe. You notice small details, the slight twitch of the left hand, the gray tinge of his gums, the scratch marks on the window frame, as if he had tried to claw his way out. You recognize the symptoms. It is not possession, it is venom withdrawal. Someone, somewhere, had already been dosing this boy. Perhaps a well-meaning herbalist, perhaps something darker, but they stopped. And the sudden absence of that venom is what his body is now screaming for. This changes everything. You request privacy, then you open your satchel. From within, you remove a vial. This one is labeled Latrodectus, 7-widow spider extract, mixed with crushed mandrake and powdered lily root. It is one of your more experimental brews, but the situation is desperate. You warm the vial near the candle, draw it up with a reed-thin glass tube, and gently place a drop under the boy's tongue. His mouth twitches, then stills. You wait. 10 heartbeats later, the boy opens his eyes and speaks. The room erupts. His mother drops to her knees in tears. Servants rush in, whispering of miracles. The steward offers you a sack of gold. You take none of it. Instead, you ask a question. Who gave him venom first? The room goes silent. The truth is, spider venom was never meant to be used casually. It is unstable. It degrades in heat. It reacts violently with common herbs. And yet, in the 1600s, hundreds of amateur apothecaries were trying their hand at it. Some would dry spiders whole and grind them into powders. Others would inject the venom into pigeons to see how long they survived. And then there were the charlatans' fake healers who claimed to milk spiders for their venom, but instead sold snake oil in fancy jars. But you are different, because you believe the venom holds secrets far beyond what has been imagined. You have seen it slow the heartbeat of a man on the verge of death. You have seen it erase fevers in hours. You have even watched as it made a blind girl blink at sunlight for the first time. And now, with access to the Medici archives, everything is about to change. You are granted access to a hidden wing of the Florentine Medical Library. Inside are texts that would be burned as heresy elsewhere, treatises from Moorish scholars, drawings of dissections, letters between French poisoners and Italian monks. But what you find next is beyond anything you expected. A journal bound in human skin, written in the hand of Paracelsus himself, the alchemist who believed that all things good and evil were made of the same elements, only in different balances. And in one of the entries, faded with age, he speaks of the breath of arachnida, a formula involving spider venom, mercury, ash, honey, and bone marrow, from a child who had never seen the moon. It is horrifying, and yet something about it makes sense. You copy the formula, and over the next 6 months, you begin testing it. Not on people, not yet. You begin with insects, then mice, then sick birds brought in by the servants. The results are strange, sometimes miraculous, sometimes deadly. One bird, paralyzed for days, suddenly begins flying again within hours of ingestion. Another dies instantly. You refine, you reduce the mercury. You add tinctures of mint and clove to stabilize the mixture. Soon, the potion becomes safer and more powerful. One night, a servant knocks on your door. There has been another case, a nobleman struck with madness of the skin, a disease causing hallucinations, itching and burning sensations across the body. He has tried every treatment. Now, he screams and tears at his flesh until it bleeds. You go because this is your work, and the spider venom ... calls to you. You enter the nobleman's estate just before dawn. The curtains are drawn. Candles flicker nervously in their holders. The air smells of vinegar and burnt sage. Superstition hangs over the place like a thick fog. The man is restrained by silk ropes. His wrists are raw from thrashing. His eyes, bloodshot and vacant, dart across the ceiling like he is following something only he can see. He is mumbling something. You lean in closer. They crawl inside. This is not madness. It is not possession. It is a reaction, and you know the pattern now. You suspect he was given venom from the Stitida spider, visually similar to the Black Widow, but chemically unpredictable when exposed to heat. You begin preparing your remedy, this time with something new. A variant of your widow extract, less potent but faster acting. The liquid shimmers like oil in the dim candlelight. You look at the nobleman's wife. She nods silently, and you administer the dose. He, CONVULSES. Once, twice, then stillness. You wait, and just as you begin to fear the worst, his chest rises, a long, rattling breath. Then another. His eyelids twitch, he blinks, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the man speaks his wife's name. There is relief, not just from his family, but from you, because what you have just done should not have worked, at least not in that dose, not with those ingredients. Something changed. You return to your workshop that night and begin poring over your notes. Every measurement, every ratio. You compare the widow venom from the latest batch with the one from the Florentine countryside. There is a difference, not in color, not in texture, but in resonance. You hold the vial closer to a singing tuning fork. The venom moves, almost like it is responding. You try again, another fork, a different pitch. The venom quivers. It is alive. That realization sends you down a darker path. Over the next few months, your work becomes more obsessive. You begin isolating venom according to the lunar cycle. You time your extractions by the alignment of stars. You start mixing in trace elements of bloodroot, crushed pearls, even ground sapphire. And somehow it works. You heal a merchant's daughter from seizures so violent they bent her spine. You stop a spreading skin rot with just a single drop of your new tincture. And rumors spread. They call you Il Tessitore del Veleno, the poison weaver. You are summoned to the court of Rome, then to Venice, then beyond. But with every step forward, the price grows heavier. You begin to suffer headaches, blinding ones. You sleepwalk. Once, you wake up in the cellar, surrounded by your spider jars. One is open. You remember nothing. You try to stop. You try to burn your notes, but something always brings you back. Then one night, a visitor arrives. A woman, dressed in gray silk. She does not speak her name. She places a black box on your table. Inside, a spider the size of your palm, glowing faintly under the lantern light. She says only one word: Brazil. You have never seen a specimen like this. It watches you. You take the venom with trembling hands, and that night you dream. You dream of silk, of fangs, of a city underground, pulsing like a heart. And when you wake, you know exactly what to do. You begin mixing a new formula, one you have never attempted before. You call it Solution Nera, the black solution. It is unlike anything else. It smells sweet, then bitter, then burns the nose. It reacts to copper. It hisses in silver bowls. When exposed to moonlight, it sings. You test it on nothing. Not a mouse, not a bird. You drink it yourself. The pain is instant. Your vision goes dark. Your body seizes. You collapse in the workshop. You see things. A spider god sitting on a throne of teeth. Your veins become webs. Your heartbeat slows, but you do not die. You awaken 3 days later, changed. You can hear insects whisper. You can smell the thoughts of the sick. You no longer need sleep, but the cost. You look in the mirror, and your eyes are no longer your own. The changes continue. Your reflexes sharpen. You catch a falling vial before it even slips from the shelf. You walk through dark tunnels without a candle and never stumble, but you also begin to hear them spider stalking, not in words, but in pulses, in frequencies. They communicate through vibrations you can now understand. One night, you fall into a trance and draw hundreds of tiny symbols across your walls. You do not remember doing it. When the morning light hits them, the patterns shimmer like silk. You begin to think, this is not alchemy, this is not medicine, this is communion. Others begin to notice the change in you. Your patients report being cured with no treatment, just your presence in the room. Your voice alone stops seizures. You breathe on open wounds and they close. But your appearance starts to disturb people. Your skin takes on a faint, pale sheen. Your veins turn silver in the moonlight. Your pupils narrow in daylight, wide as coins in darkness. You wear gloves. You avoid mirrors. You begin to sleep in a suspended web-like hammock to ease the pressure in your joints. And still, you continue your work, because something inside you whispers, you are close, so very close. And then the Vatican sends for you. They do not ask, they command. You are to appear before a council of inquisitors. You bring your journals, your extracts, your vials. But the moment you step inside their chamber, the torches flicker and go out. A priest collapses before you speak a word. Another begins vomiting insects. They accuse you of demonic pact, of sorcery, of being less than human, and you say nothing. You simply look at them, and one by one, they go silent. You leave that place untouched, but not unmarked. The church cannot stop you, so it tries to bury you. It begins rewriting your story. They erase your name from the university rolls. They burn your workshop. They poison your final clients, and you disappear. For decades, nothing is heard, only rumors, whispers of a physician who could heal blindness by touch and drive a man mad with a glance, whispers of a spider-faced man in the catacombs beneath Paris, a healer, a monster, a god, until one day in the year 1742, a letter arrives at the desk of a young apothecary in Prague. It bears no seal. Inside, a single page, a recipe, written in the same symbols you once scrawled in trance, instructions for a cure, a new venom tincture, and beneath the final line, a signature, Il Tessitore del Veleno, the poison weaver, he is alive, or something wearing his skin still walks the earth, and the formula begins to spread again. Some say it is legend, a myth passed between generations of fringe scientists. Others say they have met him or seen his work. The countess in Vienna, who never aged, the prison warden in Who Walked Through Fire untouched, the girl in Lion who spoke in 10 languages overnight, all supposedly touched by the black solution. But here is the real question. Was it ever about healing? Or was the venom never the cure, but the invitation? So what was it? What was this so-called black solution? And how did spider venom become the secret obsession of fringe medicine for centuries? Let us leave the legend and return to the science. 17th century Europe was a place of wild ideas, both brilliant and unhinged. Physicians experimented with magnetism, powdered mummy, and toadstone. Many believed illness came from imbalanced humors, while others sought cures in starlight and prayers. But there were those quiet, curious, and far more dangerous who studied the animal kingdom. They believed nature, even in its most terrifying forms, held the true answers to health. And so, a strange new field emerged. Animal venom therapy. Spiders were among the first creatures studied. Why? Because even in the 1600s, they were feared and revered. Some European rural doctors noticed that victims of spider bites, those who survived, sometimes reported strange after-effects, heightened senses, clearer dreams, decreased pain. This, of course, could have been myth, but to certain minds, it was enough to open the door. In Germany, one underground physician wrote in a private letter, "The venom of the black spinner brings darkness before clarity, madness before awakening. I believe it can mend what the humors cannot." Soon, jars of spider venom began showing up in private cabinets and secret university vaults, carefully harvested, suspended in alcohol, sealed with wax. The first official trials were horrific. A patient in Utrecht was injected with a diluted tarantula extract to treat night terrors. He thrashed for hours, bit through his tongue, then fell into a sudden, deep sleep. When he awoke, he was calm, and he claimed he had seen the weaver of his mind mending broken memories. No one knew what that meant, but he never had another episode again. So the trials continued. By 1682, there were at least 11 known cases of spider venom therapy recorded across Europe. mostly in secret, often illegal. The venom was usually mixed with wine, mead, or even milk. The goal was not to kill but to unlock. Unlock what? The deeper layers of the mind. That was the theory, at least. Many patients claimed to relive traumatic memories, but from outside themselves, like an observer. Others said they saw colors that had no names, or heard music in complete silence. Some drew strange spirals, over and over, as if remembering something ancient. A woman in Seville took a few drops of spider wine, then sang non-stop for 6 hours in ancient Greek. She had never studied the language, but a monk nearby swore her recitation was nearly flawless. That night, her fever broke. Her illness never returned, but for every miracle, there were tragedies. In London, a trial went terribly wrong when the venom caused full-body paralysis and hallucinations of spiders crawling beneath the skin. The patient later threw himself into the Thames. In Prague, a nobleman demanded to be given a double dose. He claimed he saw the face of God, made of webs. He was never able to speak again. There were even rumors of an entire convent that tried the venom together. None of the nuns spoke a word for the rest of their lives. They simply stared, silent, smiling. Some claimed the venom opened the mind. Others said it broke it. Then it all disappeared. By the early 1700s, almost every text on spider venom therapy was gone, burned, stolen, hidden. The university records were erased. Physicians who spoke of it were denounced, exiled, or mysteriously vanished. Even the Vatican refused to acknowledge the trials. The only surviving recipe appeared anonymously in a German medical journal in 1711. The extract of the spinner must not exceed the width of a pin's head. Stir in the blood of a black hen. Mix only on the first night of a full moon. And never taste the brew until the spiders cease whispering. It was dismissed as nonsense, filed under hallucinogenic experiments, and forgotten. But now you know, and maybe now you hear them too. That gentle tapping at your window, the soft brushing under your bed, the tiny whispering pull in your mind, asking if you want to remember more. Because the spider venom may not just be a potion. It may be a question, and your answer, well, you already drank it. But you may be wondering, was it really forgotten, or was it hidden? Let us go forward, past the Enlightenment, beyond the Industrial Age, and into the dim-lit corners of 20th century Europe. There, behind locked doors in old asylums, whispers of spider venom began to resurface. It started in Vienna. A researcher named Dr. Heinrich Baum claimed to have found a chemical fingerprint of tarantula venom that could suppress violent outbursts in schizophrenic patients. His methods were controversial. He used live spiders, placed them in sealed jars with patients, and collected sweat samples after prolonged exposure. He published a small paper in 1926 titled The Subtle Suggestions of the Eight-Legged Mind. It was banned in less than a year, but not before a copy was smuggled into Zurich. There, a different kind of mind took interest. Carl Jung, already deeply immersed in dreams and the unconscious, made quiet notes about spider symbolism. He never mentioned venom, but in a private notebook found decades later, there was a single line: "The spider knows what the analyst does not." No one knows what it meant. But in the 1930s, a new wave of fringe psychiatry began experimenting with microdoses of animal venom, especially spiders. This time, the goal was not to treat illness, it was to awaken something. Reports from a now demolished Swiss clinic describe patients entering lucid dreams, speaking in multiple voices, and drawing complex mandalas that mirrored ancient Mesopotamian designs. One woman screamed in Latin for 12 hours. When the doctors translated her words, they read, "Bind not the web, let the mind walk free." That clinic was shut down in 1939. Every file burned, every bottle of venom destroyed. At least, that is what they claimed. But strange stories continued. During World War II, certain German officers were reportedly injected with a substance to sharpen perception and resist fear. One prisoner described a man staring at him during an interrogation, eyes wide, whispering that he could see the strings behind his face. No one ever confirmed what the injections were, but the soldiers called it Weber-Traum, the weaver's dream. After the war, spider venom therapy disappeared again, except, oddly, in one place, Brazil. Deep in the Amazon, native shamans had long used spider extracts during vision rituals. They believed the spider was a guardian of memory, not just of personal memories, but of the entire jungle. Western anthropologists in the 1950s recorded several rituals where the venom caused participants to chant in perfect unison, draw symmetrical maps of river systems, and even identify unmarked graves. These shamans never read the European texts. They never knew the old formulas, but somehow their methods matched nearly perfectly. So the question remains, who taught who? Meanwhile, back in Europe, something else was happening. A series of underground movements emerged, calling themselves the Children of the Web. They believed modern medicine had become too mechanical, too divorced from instinct and intuition. These people did not seek to heal symptoms. They sought to dissolve the boundary between body and mind. They met in abandoned churches, candlelit basements, forest clearings, and yes, they used venom. But this time, not from tarantulas. Instead, they turned to the recluse spider, tiny, shy, deadly. They believed the recluse held the purest form of the memory thread, a substance that, when refined, could unlock ancestral trauma and reveal generational secrets. Their process was meticulous. First, they fasted for 7 days. Then, on the night of a lunar eclipse, they applied the venom to the skin, ever ingesting it. They would then fall into trances, whispering languages no one had taught them. Some described seeing the lives of their great-grandparents, as if they were standing there. One man collapsed in tears, swearing he watched his grandfather bury a child he had never spoken of. Others saw wars, plagues, weddings, betrayals, all of it not like a memory, but like a return. And when they awoke, they would write it down, every detail, every color, every sound. They called this state the returning, and they believed it was not hallucination, it was time travel. But eventually, as always, things spiraled. Some became addicted. Others began to lose their grip on reality. One member walked into the sea, never to return. Another tried to weave a giant web using piano wire in an old opera house. He called it a net for catching time. He was institutionalized a week later, and so, once again, the records vanished. The groups disbanded. The spider went quiet, but the idea never died. You may be thinking, this all sounds too strange, too mystical. But what if the science is just hidden in the symbols? Because in 2009, a study from the University of Copenhagen quietly revisited the properties of spider venoms, specifically from the Brazilian wandering spider. They discovered something shocking. A single peptide in the venom had the ability to induce long-term synaptic plasticity. In simple terms, it helped neurons create lasting connections, memories. It was not a sedative, it was an enhancer. And while the study framed it as a possible treatment for cognitive decline, others read between the lines. Was this the missing piece? Had the spider known all along? Meanwhile, artists and musicians in Berlin began reporting a strange trend. Without knowing each other, many of them described visions of spiders weaving threads from their fingertips as they composed music or painted. Some said the images came during sleep paralysis, others during intense emotional episodes. One even sculpted a room-sized spiderweb entirely out of violin strings, claiming it was downloaded into his mind after a night terror. The web was later installed in a museum. Visitors claimed it made them feel watched, not afraid, not unsafe, just observed, as if something remembered them. What is it about spiders? Why do they sit at the edge of our consciousness, half horror, half holy? In almost every ancient culture, the spider is both creator and destroyer. In West Africa, Anansi spins stories that hold the world together. In Native American lore, the Spider Woman wove the web of life. In ancient China, spiders were seen as good luck, happy insects that brought fortune when they descended on a thread. And in India, the goddess Maya spun the illusion of the world itself. Coincidence? Or did all these civilizations glimpse something? Something that hid itself in silk and silence. As the 20th century ended and the digital age began, some thought the spider would fade, but instead it multiplied. The internet was called the web. Neural networks were described as spider-like. Conspiracy theories spoke of hidden webs of control. And deep in the biotech sector, quiet patents began to appear: chemical synthesis of spider peptides for use in memory enhancement, trauma therapy, and dream induction. The language was dry, but the implications were not. One patent even mentioned the possibility of ancestral memory recovery. Just imagine taking a capsule and seeing through the eyes of someone who lived 500 years ago. But there was a catch: too much, and the line between self and other began to blur. One test subject reported dreaming he was his own grandfather. When he woke, he could no longer remember his own birthday, and so the research slowed. Or maybe it just went deeper. Today, very little of this is public, but the rumors persist. A private lab in Estonia is said to be experimenting with venom mapping. A New Age clinic in Northern California offers a neural weaving experience for $5,000 a session. They do not say what the process involves, only that it reconnects your threads. Some walk away stunned, others changed. There was one final thread. In a dusty archive in Prague, a forgotten notebook surfaced. No title, no date, only a symbol on the cover 8 spokes, spiraling inward. Inside were 204 pages of notes, drawings of spiders, anatomical diagrams, handwritten observations in 4 languages. The writer referred to themselves only as the Watcher. On the final page, they wrote, "The venom is not a poison. It is a question, and that is where we must leave it. Because at this point, you have to ask yourself, was this just strange history? Or was it something else? Something still alive, still weaving in the shadows? But what if the venom was not just chemical? What if it also carried information? You see, in the field of epigenetics, Scientists have discovered that trauma, emotional or physical, can leave imprints on DNA expression that are passed down through generations. It is not the genes themselves that change, but how they are read. Now consider this. What if certain species of spiders evolved to store their survival memories, moments of stress, terror, hunger in their venom? And what if, through some twisted experiment or forgotten ritual, humans tapped into that library, not by accident, by design? A 1987 journal article in the British Medical Archives described a mysterious compound labeled only as SV17. The entry was short, redacted, and buried in a footnote of a report on obsolete pharmacological agents. Its described effects induces episodes of vivid ancestral imagery, compulsive behavioral mimicry, and acute empathic resonance. It was withdrawn after unacceptable results in subjects with unstable genetic baselines. That was the only public record. Unofficially, however, some former researchers from a Swiss neurological institute claimed that SV17 was derived from a synthetic version of black widow venom. But the compound had a strange side effect. Repeated doses led to the subjects forming what they called interior spiders, mental constructs. They would begin to feel webs being spun behind their eyes, literally. In one audio recording, a subject whispered, "It is sitting just behind my thoughts. I do not think alone anymore." That tape was never published, but it leaked online decades later, fueling conspiracy forums. Some believed the interior spiders were metaphors for trauma processing. Others believed they were intruders, entities, something that lived within the venom, a different kind of intelligence. Not human, not quite alien, but something older, patient, waiting. And here is the twist. Some people wanted more of it. By the mid-2000s, underground circles in Berlin and Buenos Aires began experimenting with microdoses of synthesized spider venom, combined with binaural audio and sensory deprivation tanks. They called it thread diving. Participants claimed to enter states of total stillness, followed by overwhelming visions of arachnid networks connecting all life. One participant said, "It felt like I remembered something I never experienced, a memory that was not mine, but now lives in me." Another described waking up days later, unable to stop drawing complex webs and ancient symbols. Some of these symbols were later matched to cave art in Turkey and northern India, symbols thousands of years apart, but nearly identical. Coincidence or echo? One neuroscientist, under anonymity, revealed that his team had quietly mapped neural patterns in test subjects under venom influence. What they found disturbed them. The brain did not go dormant. It lit up in patterns never seen in normal dream states. It was as if a second consciousness was co-rating the experience. Not a hallucination, a co-author, a presence. They tried to scrub the data, but one intern leaked a line of the report. Spider venom may act as a biochemical bridge between memory and non-local awareness. In layman's terms, a chemical capable of connecting your mind to something that does not reside in your body or time. And this brings us back to the 17th century, to the plague doctors, to the herbalists and shadowy apothecaries who experimented without permission, without oversight, and without fear. There are fragmented texts, some in Latin, some in older dialects, referring to the silk cure. They describe injecting diluted spider venom through reed tubes into patients suffering from hysteria, melancholia, or night strangling. It was not about curing sleep paralysis. It was about navigating it. learning to walk the web between waking and dreaming, to enter the place where the spider waits, where, they believed, a bargain could be struck. A terrifying idea, is it not, that people willingly approached this being, not to defeat it, but to commune with it, to ask it questions, to offer it parts of themselves in return for insight. And when the dreams returned, they were no longer random. They were instructional, ritualistic. Some even claimed to see diagrams, webs that were not just patterns, but maps, maps of consciousness, maps of memory, and one of something deeper, not the mind, not the soul, but the thread that binds both. And then came the disappearances. Scattered across early modern Europe, reports emerged of individuals vanishing during sleep. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just empty beds and strange patterns drawn in soot or blood left on the floors and walls. Authorities wrote them off as hysteria or folk panic, but certain physicians and clerics recorded the details with alarming consistency. They described the symbols as arachnid sigils, believed to be the mark of a successful communion, but with what, and at what cost? One case, in 1643, Venice described a woman who returned after 3 days missing. She had no recollection of where she had gone, but her arms were covered in symmetrical bites, not from rodents or insects, from fangs, 8-pronged, evenly spaced. She spoke in a whisper for weeks, reciting what her husband called nonsense poems that mentioned threads, weaving, and names no one had ever heard before. Her blood changed, too. Physicians who examined her noted that her clotting time slowed dramatically, as if her body resisted sealing itself. One doctor wrote, "It is as though the patient now circulates a thinner, faster humoral spirit, something not of terrestrial origin. No one could explain it, and worse, no one wanted to." Over time, even the church grew nervous. By the late 17th century, multiple papal edicts were issued forbidding the harvesting or injection of arachnid venom for any medicinal purpose. The reasoning, tampering with the veil, a poetic phrase, yes, but also chilling. You see, in many esoteric traditions, the veil refers to the barrier between this world and another. To pierce it is to invite what waits on the other side. And perhaps that is what they feared most, not death, not madness, but clarity. Because some claimed that once you made contact with the spider, your understanding of time of self, you saw your body as a cocoon, you saw your life as thread, and you saw the others, the many others, strung along parallel paths, running beside yours in perfect silence. Some said they learned things, memories of other versions of themselves, lives they had never lived but felt like home. It did not bring comfort. It brought obsession. Some people never returned, not mentally, not emotionally. They became obsessed with pattern, symmetry, and web-like organization in every part of their lives. One final letter, recovered from an abandoned apothecary in Prague, dated 1691, read, "I see it now. The venom was never the tulip, was the invitation. The key to a door I should never have opened." The web connects us, yes, but it also consumes. If you find this letter, burn it, and do not follow. The author was never identified, but the building where the letter was found burned to the ground 2 days later. Locals claimed they saw a column of black smoke rise unnaturally fast, and for a few seconds, within the flames, something moved. Something with legs, many legs. Now, in modern times, we tell ourselves we are beyond such superstitions. We think science has chased away the shadows. But the question remains, why do so many people still report visions of spiders during sleep paralysis? Why do children who have never heard of such tales wake up screaming about webs in their mouths? And why do certain individuals across cultures, across time, describe the same dark figure with too many limbs? Maybe the old cures were never about healing. Maybe they were about opening something, unlocking what lies just beneath the skin of the world, the truth that crawls when no one is watching. You wanted to know about the grisly use of spider venom in 17th century medicine. Now you know. But remember, some doors, once opened, do not close, and some threads, once tugged, will lead you back into the dark, where the spider waits, patient, hungry, and ready to weave you into its story. But what if the story did not end there? What if, despite the warnings, the practices survived, not in books, not in apothecaries, but in whispers, in rituals, in bloodlines? Because deep in the countryside of old Bavaria, tucked among the black pines and stone chapels, there are still families who speak of threadbinders, women born with the marca small pattern of dots on the skin, like a spider's back, who are said to feel the vibrations of truth in their bones. They do not use venom in the traditional sense. They distill dreams, and in those dreams, the spiders still speak. In one record, dated 1742, a French naturalist traveling through the region claimed to witness a threadbinder ritual. He was never the same. His journal, now housed in a private collection, describes what he saw in frantic handwriting. They drew a circle in ash and salt. They sang without sound. And in the center, one woman opened her mouth, and the spider came out, not crawling, not skittering, but unfolding, as if her jaw had hidden it for years. It danced on 8 legs, but made no sound until it spoke to me, and I cannot forget what it said. He never wrote the spider's words, but the rest of his journal grew increasingly incoherent, trambling on about geometric languages and blood echoes. He died penniless in Paris, convinced his veins had been rewired. But why spider venom? Why did this one substance so grip the minds of healers, mystics, and monarchs alike? Some say it was its dual nature. It kills, yes, but it also preserves. It silences the body and heightens the mind. It pulls you inward, into yourself, and through yourself. It is both a key and a mirror. And perhaps that is what frightened the church most. Not that the venom could kill, but that it could reveal. There are accounts of visionaries in the final days of their lives, begging for spider venom as a sacrament. They wanted to face death with open eyes, they said, to see the pattern before the fall. It is hard not to wonder, what did they see? What thread did they believe held their soul? And where did they hope it would lead? We may never know. But fragments remain. Old wooden carvings in forgotten monasteries, cobweb-filled basements beneath burned-down estates, poems etched in bone, and always the same symbol, a spiral inside a spiral, turning inward, always inward. In the 1990s, an urban explorer in Eastern Europe stumbled across a sealed room beneath an abandoned cathedral. Inside, she found hundreds of jars, each one labeled in Latin, all containing preserved spiders. At first, she assumed it was a scientific collection, but then she noticed the inscriptions. Each label bore a name, not of species, but of people. Some jars even had dates, and behind them, scrawled on the stone wall in rust-red pigment, were the words, "We remember in silk." The explorer fled and never returned. So ask yourself, what are we really afraid of? The bite, the venom, the webs, or the pattern we might recognize within them? Is the spider our enemy or our reflection? And if we have always feared the same image across continents, across time perhaps, that fear is not irrational at all. Perhaps it is memory, etched into us, carried in our blood, woven into our dreams. Because even now, somewhere in the world, someone is reaching for the thread, tugging at the edge of what is real, and somewhere else, something tugs back. Perhaps they are no longer using venom. Perhaps they do not need to, because once the door has been opened, once the mirror has been stared into, the echo remains, and the web remembers. So the next time you wake up from a dream that felt too deep, when your skin itches and you swear something moved across your bed, when you see a shadow on the ceiling, eight-legged and still, ask yourself, was it just a nightmare, or was it an invitation? Now you know the story of how spider venom was used, abused, feared, and worshipped in the 17th century. A story that did not end, only coiled and waits for you.